time, I was like, what's going on?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, when you hit pause, I was like,
25 minutes.
you're so positive, okay,
Yeah.
I believed you. I believed everything you're saying.
Oh. Are you guys ready? Are you on?
I am on.
Okay, perfect. Okay, begin please.
Hi friends, how are you guys?
Doing great, thank you.
Good. My name is Miss Holmes, in case you forgot. Today we have a really fun lesson that involves fractions. So I want to start today with our goal. So by the end of this lesson, we should be able to look at two fractions and determine what numbers come in between them. So that's what we're going to learn today. Are you guys ready?
Alright.
Alright, so we're all going to pay attention and stay focused together. So let's just start by saying, what is a fraction? Does anybody know?
It's like not like a whole number.
It's
It's
not a
little
whole
part of
number.
Something.
It's a part of what?
Something. It could be a chocolate.
So it's a part of a whole number. Or it could be part of a chocolate bar, part of a candy bar, part of something. So good job. Can someone raise their hand and tell me what this top number is called? Maybe Kevin or CJ?
Abominator.
Okay,
There's one of the abominator, but I can't remember which one is it.
you're close. You have some of the right sounds, but not quite. Maria, do you know what the top number in a fraction is called?
Numerator.
The numerator. So this top number right here is the numerator. Does anybody know
Oh,
what?
I said abominator.
See, I told you you were kind of close, just not quite.
Oh, I got you, girl. You great.
All right. It was a good guess. She tried her best. Ed, do you know what this bottom number is called?
Wait, with the number what?
What's the bottom number called? If the top number is the numerator, what's the bottom number?
Oh, denominator.
The denominator. Yes, so we know that a fraction is a part of a whole, and we know that the top number is the numerator and the bottom number is the denominator. So before we start looking at numbers that would come in between two fractions, first I want to start by reviewing how to compare numbers, and specifically how we compare fractions. So if I have 3/4 and I have 3/8, how do I know which one is bigger? Does someone want to raise their hand and tell me which one they think might be bigger? CJ?
I know.
Which one do you think is bigger?
Well, you kind of take a look at it. If 8 is bigger than 4, that's bigger.
So you think 3/8 is bigger than 3/4?
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone agree with CJ? Sean, what do you think?
Is that a tricky question?
I don't know. It might be a tricky question, but we're going to figure it out together. So do you agree with CJ?
Well, at first that would make sense, I think.
You would think maybe it does make
I'm
sense.
not really sure.
Because 8 is bigger than 4. So let's draw it out. If we're not positive, we can draw a picture. So let's draw this. That's the whole. And if we want to make it 3/4, what am I going to divide it into? How many parts should I
4.
have? 4. Good job. So I have 4 parts. And then I need to shade how many pieces of that?
For the first one, 3.
For the first one, 3. So there's 3/4. Now let's draw 3/8. So I'm going to draw it, and then how many parts do I need to separate it into?
8.
8. So I'm going to separate it into 8 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then how many do I need to shade in on this one?
Also 3.
Also 3. Good job. So if we look at these and we say that 3/4, this is a cake, and 3/8 is a cake, would you rather have 3/4 of the cake or 3/8 of the cake? Which one looks bigger?
Well, actually the first one looks bigger, but it depends on the type of cake.
Depends on the type of cake. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I was gonna say that definitely the first one is bigger.
The first one looks bigger. And do you guys know why, even though 8 is technically a bigger number than 4? Can anyone figure out, now that we've drawn the picture, why 3/4 is bigger?
Because it's how much of the whole we have.
Right, we're only dividing the whole into 4 for 3/4, so those pieces are going to be bigger. But when we divide this whole into 8ths, those are tiny little pieces, right? Okay, good job. So now we're going to try another problem, and we're going to try comparing it, but we're going to do it in a different way. So let me erase this board with the pictures. And so our next problem that we're going to compare is if I have 2/6 cookies of a whole cookie and 5/8 of a whole cookie, which one is bigger? So 2/6 and 5/8. So we could draw this one again, right? Could we draw it again, maybe?
Yeah, let's draw it. I can't tell by just looking at it.
So one way that you can tell just by looking at it is if we make our denominators the same, or we make them have a common denominator. Can anyone raise their hand and tell me how to get a common denominator? Ed, how do you think you would get a common denominator?
Isn't that when you like try to find numbers that like multiply or maybe divide? I can't remember.
You were right,
Like the
multiply.
same numbers?
Exactly. So when you look at the bottom numbers, you want to try and find a number that they would both multiply to. So what's a number? Can anyone look at 6 and 8 and tell me what's a number that they would both multiply to? Maria, how about you tell us? What number can both 6 and 8 multiply to?
You can multiply 6 and 8 by anything you want.
I can, but if I'm trying to get them to have a common denominator, what number can they both multiply to?
You could probably do.
It's kind of a tricky question.
No, well, you could do maybe 16.
16, so 8 times 2 gives me 16. 6 times what would give me 16?
Nothing.
Nothing. What about 24?
Yeah, that could work.
So 6 times what gives me 24? Can someone raise their hand and tell me 6 times what?
I think 24 is 24.
6 times 4 is 24. But if we multiply the denominator, do we have to multiply the numerator too?
I think so.
Yeah, we do. So we know that that is going to give us 24. So 4 times 2 is what? Who can raise their hand and tell me?
Oh, that's 4.
4 times 2,
Oh, that's 8.
8. And then 4 times 6 is 24. And then what times 8 gives us 24? If we multiply 8 by what number would we get 24?
3.
8 times 3. And then we also have to multiply 5 by what? And what do we have to multiply 5 by?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, by 3.
By 3, you agree? Okay. So 3 times 5
Oh, that's 15.
is 15. And 3 times 8 is
24.
24. So now,
Okay, but I don't understand how you figured it was 24.
so the way that I
You kind
think,
of said it. Because Maria didn't know, and you just kind of said 24. So how was I supposed to know?
you're right, I did just kind of say it. So when I was looking, the way that I was doing it, Maria suggested that we look at 16. And so I was thinking, do I know a number that 6 can multiply by to give me 16? Do you know if 6 can multiply anything to give you 16?
No, but then you just went to 24 right away.
Okay, you're right, I did. So I know that 6 can't multiply by anything to give me 16. What about 6 times 3? What's 6 times 3?
18.
18. So I know I could do 6 times 3 and say, well, that's 18. But can I multiply 8 by anything to give me 18?
10.
8 times 10 would not give me 18. 8 plus 10 would give me 18.
That's right. Never
But I'm
mind.
trying to multiply. So there's nothing that 8 multiplies by to give me 18. So I know that 6 times 3 is 18. What's 6 times 4?
24.
So I know 6 times 4 is 24. Can I multiply 8 by anything to give me 24?
4.
Not 4,
3.
3. So that's how I got to it. We kind of have to go through a process of guessing and checking.
Oh my gosh, it's gonna take forever.
It can take a while,
Why
but
did you don't know?
sometimes.
You're gonna test it, right? And I will never be able to do that.
Well, remember we just learned a different method where we drew pictures. So if you didn't want to do finding a common denominator and you just wanted to draw pictures because that's what you find easier, then you could draw pictures. But maybe some people don't want to draw pictures and they want to do it this way because they think it's easier for them. So we like to learn a lot of different methods, right? Because everyone likes different methods.
Yeah, different methods sometimes are good.
Different methods can be good. So, does that make more sense now, CJ?
I guess so.
As to how we got 24, but you don't have to use this method. You can use the other method that we talked about, and we're going to learn some other methods too. Okay? So when we look at 8/24 and 15/24, which one is bigger? And remember they have
15 over 24.
15 over 24. And how did you know that?
Because 8 is bigger than 15. Now we can compare because 24 is the same.
8 is bigger than 15 or 15 is bigger than 8?
15 is bigger than 8.
15 is bigger than 8, you're right. So we could compare these because they had the same denominator. So that's why some people might want to use this method because once you get them to have the equal parts on the bottom, it's a lot easier to compare them because of the numerators. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before we move on, does anybody have any questions on what we just did?
I don't think so.
Okay, so let's move on. Do you guys know what a number line is? Have you used those before?
Is it a line that has numbers on it?
It is a line that has numbers on it, and it helps you visually see numbers. So just a quick example, I'll draw a number line, and we'll start at 0 and we'll end at 5, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see all those numbers between 0 and 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on a number line, you can also represent fractions. You don't just have to represent whole numbers. So we're going to look at a problem and we're going to work through this together. And with this problem, we're going to learn different strategies too. So we can all have a strategy that might work better for us. So if I have 3/8, let's say that CJ is out for a walk in the park and she stops 3/8 of the way there. Then Ed is also out for a walk in the park and he stops 7/8 of the way there. And the rest of us are somewhere in between the two of them. So let's find where the rest of us might be, okay? So let's work through this. First, what's our first step that maybe we should do?
First step is to know what fractions we're working with.
What fractions we're working with. So we said that CJ is at 3/8 and Ed is at 7/8. And so those are the fractions that we're working with, right?
Yeah.
So the first way that we could maybe find some of the numbers in between them are to look and say, what comes in between 3 and 7? Can someone raise their hand and give me a number that comes in between 3/8 and 7/8?
4, 5, 6.
Can you raise your hand and tell me a number that comes in between 3/8 and 7/8? Okay, CJ, just give me one number.
Fine. 5,
5 what?
8.
5/8. Maria, can you raise your hand and give me a number that comes in between 3/8 and 7/8?
Yes.
Okay, tell me a number that would come in between 3/8 and 7/8. Please. 4/8? Good. So we know that that's one way to find some numbers that come in between fractions is just to look at them and say, I know I have 3/8 and I know I have 7/8. So what numbers come in between them? But if you wanted to visually represent that, we could bring out our number line again, and we could put those numbers on a number line, right? So does,
Yep, I guess so.
so do you guys want to go on the pad and see if you can find a way to draw a number line and represent the different
I don't
problems?
want to. Thank you.
Okay,
Oh, I do.
CJ, how about you and Kevin work together with Maria? The three of you can work together, and Ed and Sean, you two work together. Okay, I'm asking you to do this, so could you just find some way to represent this problem for us?
No, you asked if we could, I said I can't, so.
Okay,
Or who wants to, and I don't want to.
okay. Do you wanna work together with me?
Oh, no, okay, I'll work with Kevin.
Okay.
Excuse me, what are the numbers again?
Because you didn't write them,
I
don't
didn't,
write
you're
them.
right, I erased them. 3/8 and, make sure I tell you right, and 7/8.
What are we doing again?
Can you find a way to represent to me how you would find the numbers that come in between 3/8 and 7/8? And can you do your work on the pad for me?
Okay.
Okay. Sean and Ed, is this your work on page 1?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys are still working?
Well, we put
Put the numbers down.
You put the numbers down and then you weren't sure where to go?
No, we just haven't had time to do everything.
Okay, so you guys go ahead and keep working for a
So,
few more moments.
we can show you.
Okay,
We have a line, would we be 1, and then, I'm sorry, would be 0, and then 1, and then we could divide it in 8.
exactly.
So, that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that was too many, I messed up.
That's okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Just pretend they're the same length.
That's okay. They look really good.
Okay, so then we could have 3/8 when we get to 3, and then 7/8 when we get to 7, which would be here.
Good. And then you could look at the number line in between and you would know what numbers fall there, right? Great job. CJ, Maria, and Kevin, did you guys come up with a different way to do it?
Kevin and I are working on page 4,
On page 4?
and we figured we could do 3/8 on one side and 7/8 on the other. That will put it there, we know one is bigger than the other.
Okay, so you know 7/8 is bigger than the other. That's good. But how do you know what numbers fall in between them?
I don't know, you didn't ask for that, you just said to put them where we could see them.
Okay, so you put those two numbers where you could see them, and then you want to be able to see what numbers come in between them. So can you add that to your number line?
Fine.
So did you notice how when Sean and Ed showed us their number line, they broke it up into how many parts? Sean, how many parts did you guys have to break it up into?
We broke it up in 8 parts.
Into 8 parts. So maybe you should start with trying to do that, CJ, and Kevin if you're working with her. So work on that for a minute. Maria, did you find a way to show us?
I have a question then.
Yes.
So, because like, if you break it up in, okay, wait, let me find. Let me just do it there. But let's say we have a line, right?
Yes.
And we have to divide it in 8. And Sean said this is 0.
Yes.
And then Sean said that this was 8. No, 7,
1.
No, that's not right. What did you say that was? I forgot.
Here, he said that he had 0 here, and he said he had 1 here.
Okay. So then do we count those as that? Like, where do we start the 1?
So you say, this is 1, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Wait,
And-
where do you start not counting the 1?
1, 2,
So the
3,
1 starts at 0? That's confusing.
pause. Does the 1 start at 0?
No.
No, so you don't count the 0.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Resume. Okay, so you don't start counting at 0. You make a line right after 0, and that's the first one that you count.
Oh, okay, because that's what I didn't know. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then do you count that last one as 8?
So that last one is 1, and we know that 8 over 8 equals 1, right?
Oh.
That's a whole fraction, and the whole
So
fraction equals
basically
1
second to last line is 7.
is 7/8. And this is 1, which is equal to 8 over 8.
Okay.
Good. So then you drew your number line, and now you can see what numbers come in between 7/8 and 3/8, right?
I guess so.
Good job. Maria, did you have a way that you worked it out?
I did the same thing as you said to do it in a number line.
Good. Okay. What page did you work on?
On page 6.
You worked on page 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Perfect. And so then you can see what numbers fall in between 3/8 and 7/8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good work, everybody. So we have another problem that we can do, and I want you guys to do this on the pad and find a way that works for you. But there is an extra step in this one that we have to solve before we can start doing it. So are you guys ready?
Oh my god, more steps.
There'll be fun steps though, and don't worry, we're all gonna work together. So the problem is that the bakery is 3/4 of the way to school. And the park is 5/8 of the way to school. And we're somewhere in
It already
between.
sounds complicated.
It already sounds complicated, don't worry, we're working through it together. So we have 3/4 of the way there, and we have 5/8 of the way there. And then we're all somewhere in between this, so we need to find out where we are. What's something that you notice about these two fractions?
Oh, that. What do you mean?
When we look at these two fractions,
They both have numbers.
They both have numbers.
Numerators and denominators.
what do you notice about their denominators?
One is 4 and the other one is 8.
One is 4 and the other is 8. So what might we want to do?
They are different.
They are different, and so we want to get a common what?
Denominator.
Common denominator. So CJ, I know you were a little confused on how we did this last time, so let's work through it nice and slow together. If we look at 4 and 8, what's something that they can multiply to equal each other? What's something that we can
You can multiply to equal each other. 8 cannot be multiplied by anything to make it 4. Well, 4 can be multiplied by 2.
by 2 to make it 8. So let's multiply 4 by 2. And what else do we have to multiply by 2? If we multiply 4 by 2, we have to multiply what by 2?
Oh, 3.
3. So multiply them both by 2. And so 2 times 3 is
6.
6. And 2 times 4 is
8.
8. And so we have 6/8 and 5/8. Is it easy to see what numbers might fall in between those two?
Yeah, a lot easier than before.
A lot easier, but we can actually make it even easier. If we find a larger common denominator, then we can make these numerators bigger. So let's look and say, is there any number that 8 multiplies
Well,
to?
why would we want to do that? We already have numbers in between. I think that's good enough.
So can you see numbers that come in between 6 and 5? Can you just look at that and tell me a number that might come in between 6/8 and 5/8?
I don't know. Like, I mean, but the thing about it is, like, there's already numbers in between, right?
There is numbers in between, but there's a way that we can make it a little easier on us so that we just have to look at it and we can easily say what numbers are in between them.
Okay.
So the way we're going to do that is, what's 8 times 2? If we want to make 8, if we want to break the fraction smaller by making 16. So 8 times 2 is 16, which means we have to multiply 6 by what? If we multiplied 8 by 2, we have to multiply 6 by
2.
2. And 6
That's 12.
is 12. And then we multiplied this 8 by 2, so we have to multiply this 8 by 2, which gives us 16. And what do we have to multiply 5 by? 10. 10? Or what do we multiply?
2, so it's
2.
10, that's what I mean.
So it's 10. You were getting ahead of yourself. So now when we look at those two numbers,
And
Nice job, Abby.
you've got really good classroom management skills. Yeah. Students were engaged, they were on task. And you know, when you needed to back up, you did to make sure that everybody understood. Very good. Okay, so we have just, I mean, we do have 7 more minutes on the clock. Did you wanna jump into the welfare lesson for 5 minutes? It's up to you.
okay.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Does anybody
Good.
want to ask the advertisers any more questions before we let them go? Okay, friends, we just wanna thank you so much for spending, the last 3 Saturdays with us. We've really enjoyed working with you, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the year.
Oh, thanks so much. It was great meeting all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, friends.
Alright, don't forget to fill out the survey. Take care.
Okay, we won't. Thank you, bye-bye.